Apologize for the interruption, but we need to bring you some breaking news. The 41st President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, has died. I'm going to bring in now CNN's Jamie Gangel. Jamie has a close relationship with the family, has kept in touch with the former president, both former presidents and their family. Jamie, what can you tell us?
So, some very sad news. We've just received a statement from his son, former President George W. Bush, announcing the death of his father, President George H.W. Bush, who we called Bush 41, and I will read the statement. It says, Jeb, Neil, Marvin, Doro, and I are saddened to announce that after 94 remarkable years, our dear dad has died. George H.W. Bush was a man of the highest character and the best dad a son or daughter could ask for. The entire Bush family is deeply grateful for 41's life and love, for the compassion of those who have cared and prayed for Dad, and for the condolences of our friends and fellow citizens. And, you know, as I read it to you just now, is actually the first time I've read it, because we just got the statement. And I have to say that what is striking is this is obviously one president talking about another president, but it's a very personal, it's clearly a son talking about his father, Don.
Mm-hmm. If you're just joining us, the sad news just into CNN that the 41st President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, has passed away. Our special correspondent, Jamie Gangel, is joining us, just reading a statement that was delivered to her from the son and former president as well, George W. Bush. Listen. You know, over the years, I mean, we have watched him as an older statesman. We have watched him jump out of airplanes. We have watched him go through illnesses. We watched him when his wife died. This is a figure in American history that will be a huge loss, especially in diplomacy and in statesmanship for this country.
Absolutely. First of all, he was 94 years old. He was our oldest living president. I have to say that his passing does not come as a complete surprise. As I think most people know, he has suffered from Parkinson's for the last couple of years. He was confined to a wheelchair, and we've reported over the years a number of times that he's been in and out of the hospital. But I think in the last couple of years, one of the most remarkable things about him was that even though he was in a wheelchair and even though he had all of these health challenges, as you point out, he was still jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. He never wanted to miss a moment. And I think that sentiment says as much about him on a personal level as anything else. He really would, when he was younger, he liked to get up at 5 in the morning and started by writing thank you notes. He would do 6 different sports. If he had a day off before noon, he was very, very active. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I was thinking about today was not too long ago in 2011, President Obama gave former President Bush the Medal of Honor. Mm-hmm. And when he gave it to him, it's the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Mm-hmm. He said that he recognized all of his career, service over 70 years, from a Navy pilot to President of the United States. But he ended by saying that it was his humility and his decency that reflected the very best of the American spirit. Just quoting Obama, he said, "Those of you who know him, President Bush 41, this is a gentleman." And I just think that's something to think about, especially in this political climate.
And they developed a close friendship over the years. Not only that, he also developed, speaking of the Obamas, but also with President Clinton as well. Let's talk about his life here because, again, and I want to read the statement, Jamie. Please stay with me here. Again, if you're just joining us, 41st President of the United States, George Herbert Walker Bush has died at the age of 94. Jamie Gangel joins us, our special correspondent. Jamie, let's just read some of the statement from the office of George H.W. Bush and talk about him. This is the Honorable George H.W. Bush, June 12, 1924 to November 30th, 2018. George Herbert Walker Bush, World War II naval aviator, Texas oil pioneer, and 41st President of the United States of America, died on November 30th, 2018. He was 94 and is survived by his 5 children and their spouses, 17 grandchildren, 8 great-grandchildren, and 2 siblings. He was preceded in death by his wife of 73 years, Barbara, his second child, Pauline Robin Bush, and his brother, Prescott and William or Bucky Bush. Funeral arrangements will be announced as soon as is practical. So let's talk about this. A World War II naval aviator, a hero.
Absolutely. I mean, we will go back in the next couple of days and show some of these pictures, but let's remember he was, when he signed up for the Navy, he actually went against his parents' wishes. They wanted him to go to college, but after Pearl Harbor, he decided he had to go fight. In World War II, he was the youngest Navy pilot when he got his wings. He was shot down in Japan and almost died, and it was a very important moment in his life because he lost 2 of his crewmen, and that always stayed with him. And then afterwards, he went on to really have one of the most extraordinary political resumes, from U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, CIA director, U.S. envoy to China, Ronald Reagan's vice president, and then, of course, President of the United States. I think one of the things that you really have to note, though, were personal relationships. People who know George H.W. Bush will tell you, oh, he's my best friend. He's a very good friend of mine. Thousands of people will tell you that. And the remarkable thing is they really all were his very good friends. He was amazing at reaching out to people, and we saw that both in politics, and we saw that in the first Desert Storm, where he put together this extraordinary coalition of countries. He was the ultimate diplomat as well.
As you look at the pictures now, I mean, he was really the patriarch of a political dynasty and, did very well in politics. I mean, reached the highest peak. He was the president of the United States. But we must remember, as has been pointed out in the statement that was released, he was a Texas oil pioneer. He was a very successful businessman that he really gave that up to serve his country in another way outside of the military.
Absolutely. There is an expression, you see it at his presidential library and in his office. His personal mottos, he had 2 of them. One was faith, family, and friends, and the second was, to your point, any definition of a successful life must include service to others. So while a lot of people think of him as being raised in Greenwich and a New England, born and bred from a well-to-do family, he did go out to Texas and make his fortune. And it was pretty humble when he started out. But once he made money, he turned back to what he thought was most important, which was public service.